Okay, and then I will go ahead and stream. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, we are live, which is very exciting. Awesome. Well, I am so thrilled to have this conversation with my incredible guest this week, who is Rosalind Sedacca, who is just really, I think, such a legend, really, in this industry, having to do with co-parenting, coaching, and supporting parents during and after the very life-altering upheaval that divorce causes, and really having a child-centric approach during all of that. So welcome, Jocelyn. I'm so thrilled to have you here joining me for this conversation.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here with you. I have great respect for the work you do, and I think our messages complement one another very well.
Yes. Jocelyn, or sorry, Rosalind. Oh my gosh, I apologize. Frog in my throat. Could you please, just for those who may have been living under a rock, if they're not familiar with you, could you just go ahead and introduce yourself?
Oh, certainly. Thank you. So I'm the founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network. I'm a divorce and co-parenting coach, and the focus of my work is helping parents before, during, and long, long after divorce to make the best decisions about their children. Because, as we all know, when parents have a divorce, the children are impacted whether you like it or not. And too often the children fall through the cracks and they pay the price for the divorce emotionally and psychologically. And we don't want that to happen. So the work that I do is on educating parents, and I love to work with both parents together, but alone or separate, talking to them about how to make better decisions and avoid the serious mistakes that we see too often, so that everyone in the family experiences what I call a child-centered divorce, child-centered co-parenting, blended families that all merge well because everyone is mindful of the emotional and psychological impact of every decision we make.
Beautiful. Awesome. Yes. Yes to all of the things you just said. And just in case you might not be familiar with me, I'm Maria Natapov. I am a step parenting and blended family coach and strategist, and just really excited about this conversation where Rosalind and I will be primarily focusing on the idea of after the divorce, one of the parents may be moving on to a new love in their life, and really unpacking and maybe taking a closer look and a deep dive into what all of the components are of that scenario and how that impacts the individual parents in that situation, as well as the children, just to really ensure that as anybody may be navigating that particular situation in their lives, that they are well informed and making the best decisions for their family. Understanding, right? Nobody gets divorced from being parents. So that is a commitment that you are in together for life. And, naturally, as Rosalind pointed out, and I myself am committed to really ensuring that children are able to resiliently and effectively, with love and support, go through this very difficult transition that it poses on them. So, and I apologize in advance. Once in a while, I will be glancing at my phone to see if we have any questions, so that we're ensuring that we're being responsive to any comments that you guys are making, because we definitely want you to be a part of this conversation and feel included in this discussion. So, without further ado, of course, there are many components we hope to get to today. I think one piece, as Rosalind and I were chatting a little bit before this conversation, that comes to mind is the idea that there is a scarcity concept often around this scenario where one person is moving on, and sometimes that can look like for the other partner, the other parent, the other co-parent who is maybe not moving on to a romantic relationship of their own post the separation or divorce, that can feel like, oh, if this person has a piece of the happiness pie, they're taking what may be there for me, and there's not enough for me to go around. Rosalind, would you like to kind of comment on that with your
Yes,
thoughts? Yeah.
and that is a real reality in
Hmm.
many families. It's rare after a divorce that both of the co-parents find a love relationship at the same time and move into similar kinds of relationships. Usually it happens with one person before the other. One may not be interested, one may be very interested. And so none of these things are done simultaneously. And that creates a kind of a relationship imbalance in some post-divorce families, because one parent may be goo-goo-eyed
Mm.
in the romance of love and the fun and the excitement of a new relationship and sexuality and all that goes with it, while the other parent is saying, here I am working harder as a parent than ever before, and none of that is happening in my life. So it creates uh, jealousies, insecurities, feelings that what's wrong with me? Why don't I have something like that in my life?
Mm.
Or resentment that the other partner is suddenly so focused on the new love relationship, they're not paying enough attention to the children. Everything is possible and comes into play. And it's very important that the both co-parents talk to each other and discuss this reality and how we're going to present it to the children
Mhm.
and how we're going to discuss it amongst ourselves, and reassure each other that this isn't a contest, that this
Yeah.
isn't a competition. These things happen organically in life, and no one can know when or if something like that's going to happen. But it's important for the parents to understand that I'm not going to be showing off and making you feel less than because I'm in a love relationship and you're not. And even more important, that the children understand that this new relationship partner doesn't mean that mom or dad has less love or time or attention for you, and
Mhm.
that there's not as much love in my heart for you, my child. So parents need to reassure their children that the love, the parental love, is something that's incomparable to any other kind of love. And no one is more important in my life than you, my child.
Yeah.
So that the children aren't feeling that suddenly life has changed for them and their place in the position power has suddenly gone down because of this new stranger. It's very important, especially early on in dating, that you make that very clear to the children, that even if I'm dating and bringing new people into my life, that that is not anything like the love bond that I have with you that's going to be there forever and ever. And so the kids don't immediately start by feeling jealous and insecure, and that the parents are not feeling that they're in a competition.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a starting comment on this.
Yeah, I love what you said, and I just want to highlight and underscore some of the points. Yeah, the competition is such a big one, and it's almost naturally comes about in these situations of, oh, they're moving on. I need to move on. I need to prove that I'm, as successful, as capable, as desirable, what have you, fill in the blank. And that's such a natural piece, I think, that arises for us as humans in those situations. And to your point, it's so critical to recognize when that's happening and address it appropriately, meaning digging deeper under what is really there underneath that urgency. to jump into the competition and comparison, um, because realistically, I know we've talked about this before, it's jumping into a brand new relationship, though often tempting, and there may be good reasons for why it feels like, oh, finally I can breathe and I can have this in my life. Nonetheless, doing so very quickly after separating from a family, from a divorce, from a long-term relationship is really something to be taken quite seriously and with a lot of heed. And the reason for that is oftentimes when emotions around the reasons that you are leaving a relationship or a relationship didn't work out, if you're not taking the time to fully process that and understand it and identify the lessons learned, then you will bring all of that potential dysfunction, for lack of a better word, into the new situation. So while it's all very fun to ensure longevity, and especially if you have kids, to create that sense of security with this new potential relationship partner that you are attaching yourself to, it is so important to identify and really set up that foundation for something that can be lasting if you're intending to bring this person into your children's lives and introduce them to your children. And so yeah, we've discussed there could often be feelings of abandonment, not only for your co-parent, who is your ex-partner, but also often for the kids as well. When one of the parents moves on too quickly, it feels like, oh wow, mom or dad are just trading us in for this new life with this new person. And so, of course, that can be very detrimental, extremely painful, but with sadly long-term negative impact on the kids and their adjustment.
And it's important to remember that for a child, very often their thinking goes along the lines of, if mom and dad used to love each other and now they've broken up and don't love each other anymore, could
Mm-hmm.
that happen with me? Could mom or dad or both of them no longer love me and leave me behind? There's nothing more frightening for a child than the insecurity
Yeah.
of losing the love and support of a parent, because children are so fragile and alone in the universe without their parents. And so just for them to be thinking about that can be dramatic and create a lot of emotional upheaval for them, fear, anxiety, insecurity, and not having any solution for that. So parents need to reassure their children frequently during and after the divorce process about how strong the love bond is with them, and that nothing that happens is ever going to change the love I have for you, and that mom will always be your mom, dad will always be your dad, and that will never change regardless of the way that the form of the family may be changing in other ways, but not the love we have for you. And
Yes.
so that moves into parents talking about in advance, before they start dating, how are we going to approach dating?
Mm-hmm.
And most professionals advise taking it very slow and doing your dating in off time and not introducing your children to a variety of people who you happen to be dating, because these relationships may last 6 weeks, 6 months. We don't know, but no one wants children to be exposed to just an influx of dating partner after dating partner after dating partner, because very often they get attached to these people. They're nice people, especially at first, and they're having fun, and then suddenly they're lost from their lives. So most professionals recommend you don't introduce your children at all to a new partner until you believe they're a keeper, that this is a relationship that I'm taking to a level beyond dating, and only then introduce them. And most times the co-parent wants you to be talking to them in advance before you introduce the children to a new strange partner in their life. And there's lots of different degrees that co-parents will have about how this is managed, but talking to each other as co-parents is the important thing, so that you could determine the agreements and the ways you plan to do this, because if it's happening to one person, it's very likely that it's going to happen to the other parent somewhere along the line, and you both want to feel that it was addressed in a fair way, correct?
Absolutely, 100%. And I would even say as well, thinking through what are the boundaries with these new people coming in? What role are they able to and not able to play in the child's life, in the decision-making process, et cetera. It is, valuable to create a foundation that is welcoming of these people's input. However, where is that line? And so having those conversations to have a clear understanding, being on the same page for the two parents, the primary biological parents, of to what degree and at which point these other individuals are able to participate in conversations around the kids, et cetera, is really, really valuable to prevent any misunderstanding, undue stress, pressure, and really just situations that create a lot of chaos, a lot of conflict, because we know that conflict is the number one key component that is a predictor of how well children are able to be resilient after divorce, and how well they're able to cope versus not. So the more conflict, the less they're able to cope, the less resilient they tend to be, and the less conflict, the more successfully they're able to navigate through these really difficult transitions.
Yeah, that is a crucial point for every parent to remember. And one of the boundaries that is commonly discussed is the fact that in most cases, you want this new partner, this new relationship partner that you have, to understand that they are never to try to act as if they were the biological parent, which
Mhm.
means they don't get into the discipline role. You don't want the children saying, "You're not my father, you're not my mother," because you're not going to be behaving that way. You introduce yourself as a warm friend of their parent, and the role of your new relationship partner is to be fun and a caretaker and a support person, but never the disciplinarian, never the person who's making decisions and rules. That's always left to the parents. And usually both parents are in alignment about that. And when they are, again, the children are getting the security and confidence of knowing when something important is happening, my parents, who are still my parents, are discussing it, talking about it, making decisions about it, and are going to get back to me about those decisions, not this new stranger who suddenly came into the picture. So, and you're the blended family expert, and you know the steps and the time it takes for
Oh, yeah.
children, for everyone to accept a new party into the family dynamic. We need a lot of patience
Yes.
to let this happen and evolve over time.
Absolutely. Yes. Following the children's lead. One quick thing I just want to point out to relate back to what you were saying, Jocelyn, and I love that. So accurate. I always say connection over consequences. That's what I'm really hearing you describe, is that the individual's responsibility is to create a connection at every single moment and reinforcing that connection, enhancing that connection with the child, not to be a disciplinarian, authoritarian individual in their lives. They already have parents to play that role and do that for them. And yeah, to your point, really following the children's leads. Very commonly, as we've identified, parents are ready to move on. They've thought this through. They know this is the best decision for them. Children, however, it is a huge wallop for them. They are not prepared. This feels like it's really rocking their entire world. And it often takes them a long time just to come to grips with, wow, my parents are getting divorced. What does that mean? For long periods of time, they're often thinking that their parents will reunify. And that is a hope that they're holding on to. And so it often takes them much longer to fully accept that reality, and let alone then to accept a new individual, a new partner of one of their parents. So really being in tune with your children and where they're at and their needs, and allowing them the space to make sense of this and accept these transitions and go at them at their own pace is so key.
Absolutely, you're right on target. And one tip I have for co-parenting success is one of the keys, because children are feeling so insecure about the divorce and the experience of losing one or both parents, or the sense of losing one or both parents, is that children are used to having both parents in their life, talking to them and making decisions about their lives. When you're divorced and you're co-parenting and you're living in two different universes in many, many ways, your children will feel this emptiness, this gap, and this insecurity. The more both co-parents can talk to each other, and of course we know that's not possible in all cases. Sometimes parents refuse to talk to each other after divorce, but the Child-Centered Divorce Network encourages as much as possible for both parents to talk to each other as parents in that role. And when a child comes to either one of you and says, so can I do such and such? The best answer is to say, that's a good question. I'm going to talk to mom or dad, and we'll get back to you about that.
Mhm.
The sense of security that a child has when they hear that even though the divorce has happened, both of my parents are still my parents. They're talking and they're making decisions, whether I like the decision or not. They're doing what they've done for my whole life. And this isn't changing. So the more you can have that relationship between the parents where you could talk to each other, and instead of just answering immediately saying, let me talk to your dad, let me ask your mom,
Mhm.
let me discuss this, one of us will get back to you, or both of us will get back to you, creates a sense of unity and alignment that the family is still a family in the most important way. And that helps children adjust and adapt to life after divorce, understanding that their co-parents are still running the show, and that regardless of whose house they're living in, they still have parents who are making loving, caring decisions about us. That's a great way to move ahead in your relationship, because the kids have the greatest sense of security in that way. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And what you're describing is so key because kids are often their primary role and objective is to test boundaries, right? That is how they
Yeah.
develop, learn, evolve, take things on, and discover what works and what doesn't. And naturally, they very commonly will see, oh, what can I get away with? What if I talk to mom about this? What if I talk to dad? If they know the parents are not talking to each other or are quick to blame each other, not only is it an upheaval and obviously they're feeling the conflict and repercussions of that, but it then creates a gap in your ability as parents to support them and ensure their safety and well-being, right? And the proper guidance that is really necessary. And they know they need it, even when they're acting like they don't want it. And it seems like they're fighting you tooth and nail. There's a piece of them that knows that they need that support and security. And that is what they're looking for from you. So when there is that gap, that rift between the parents and their ability to communicate, it leaves the children very vulnerable at these really critical times in their development. So absolutely, yeah, where possible, communication. Now it may not be face to face, it might not be over the phone, but communication, consistency, clarity, and that intention, and really prioritizing that is the key.
It simplifies life for everyone in the family. And that's what
100%.
we're trying to do. There's enough changes that divorce creates. We don't want to amplify any unnecessary changes. So the more life is what's usual for your children, the easier they can adapt and move ahead with accepting changes. And one of the rules that I talk to parents about in my coaching is that this is about change and not about blame. So there's no finger pointing and talking about your ex in negative ways, because that hurts children. They are in pain because they're caught up not knowing which side to take and feeling split and either angry or protective of one or both parents. And if you're blaming, you're creating problems for the
Yeah.
children. If instead you're talking about the future in a positive way and both parents have a positive mindset about we've got this, we're
Yeah.
taking care of it. I know there's some difficult questions. Not everything's running smoothly. We're going to figure this out. Don't worry about it. Take the burden off your children's shoulders where it doesn't belong. Let them be children. Don't rob them of their childhood. Take on the parental responsibilities that are yours anyway, and remind them that you're running the show, both of these two parents. It just gives them a sense of security so that they can move on.
Yeah.
So we never talk about judging. We talk about change, because change is inevitable in life. The seasons change, your grades in school change, your classes change, sports change. Everything in life is change. Children can understand change very easily when you talk to them about it. It's so change and not blame make all the difference in the world in keeping your focus on the positive and what's understandable and what makes children feel more secure.
Yeah. And not only does all of that, which you just beautifully outlined, Rosalind, create security and a calm, nurturing environment for your children to safely grow up and develop in, it also role models for them how to be flexible, how to have grace, right? How to be able to be forgiving with themselves and others, because that voice that they're hearing from their parents becomes their internal voice. We know this. So it greatly impacts their future, their life, and how they treat themselves and others and going forward. So when you are modeling that for them, it really truly sets them up with powerful life skills for their future success.
Beautifully said, right on target. And that's so important for every parent to really, really grasp and understand on a deep level. These few points make such a difference in moving ahead in a way that's going to be more flowing and harmonious for everyone in the family versus way that's filled with scattering and back and forth and insecurity and deep wounds and toxic behavior. All of that can be avoided when you're just taking these tips and these insights, digesting them and applying them to your life. It'll make a huge difference. And we want you to have the happy ending of your children thanking you when they're grown adults, saying
Yes.
thank you for the way you handled the divorce, because that means so much to every child.
Oh, yeah. Because the other piece that I just want to briefly mention is estrangement is on the rise. Estrangement is something that takes years and years, decades really, in the making often. And it comes from these pivotal moments like a divorce and an enormous life event that children are too young to be able to fully understand and be able to speak about openly with their parents. However, the impact is felt by them. And eventually, as they grow up, they do find the words and they draw pretty harsh conclusions because they only have their own experience to look through the lens of. They're not, they're young. They're not able to grasp all of the intentions and, well, things were hard for mom in this way and hard for dad in this way. Those are advanced skills they don't often have. And so what we're seeing is a lot of children being extremely hurt because of past ways and interactions and things that parents, how parents handled situations, but they didn't have the ability to express that to them. And then years later, it has had a negative impact on them that they've held on to. And now it's not to say I don't believe that it's ever too late. However, it's just that much more of an enormous hurdle to overcome. And sometimes kids just aren't willing. They're not even willing to come to the table to have conversations about it. So these things that we are pointing to are truly important, even if it doesn't feel like the impact is as great in this very moment. It kind of, the effect kind of grows over time. So really taking heed of our advice here, I think, is truly a powerful way to prevent a lot of heartache for everybody involved. And in order to create a flourishing family post divorce. It's a redefined family, right? You're redefining, reimagining the paradigm, however, still having those bonds together as the parents and the children is really valuable for everyone.
Absolutely. Do we have time to bring up one more point that
Of
I
course.
to
Yes, absolutely.
there's one other factor that I think every parent needs to be mindful of. Children are very sensitive. They love you so much. They care about you, and they're feeling helpless watching something going on that they can't figure out and explain entirely. Sometimes it was subtle, sometimes it was very dramatic and dark before the divorce. Whatever happened in those prior months or years, the children are now stepping into something new and they want to fix it. And
Yeah.
every child is trying to think of ways that they could bring their parents back together, fix the relationship. And we know that that's impossible. We as adults couldn't fix it and make it work. How could our children do that? But they're going to try because that's all they have to think about and dwell on. And so it's very important that parents are mindful that your child, especially as they get a little older and move over age 8 and 10 and 12 into teen years, especially if they're very precocious and sensitive, will try not only to fix this situation, but to parent you, to take you in their arms and hold you and tell you it's going to be okay, or to help you wipe your tears if they're seeing you sad and crying or depressed, and say, it's okay, I'm going to step up because I'm going to be the man in the family now, and I'm going to take care of you, mom or dad, and I'm going to be the best little girl in the world now because you need that. And what happens is that children will try to parent you as their parent. And that is not only damaging, but it's a damage that very usually will not change because it's so importantly divisive within the child's psyche, because the children can't parent you, and so it changes who they are, and suddenly they are thinking like a little adult and trying to put the picture together in ways that are impossible to do. So they lose their childhood. They can't go back to not knowing what they know now and thinking about what they're thinking about now. So we have, as parents, have to be more precocious and move ahead and not allow them to do that. We appreciate their sensitivity, but we don't want to encourage them in taking care of us, finding
Yes.
ways to fix the situation, make life easier for us. We have to step up and remind them we're the parents, we're taking care of things, we have help, we have support. You can go about your business of being a kid and dealing with school and friends and all the challenges that children have today, which are enormous. Don't
Enormous.
rob your children of their childhood, and be mindful of the subtle ways that it happens, because it isn't something that's so obvious initially, but it can embed your entire relationship with your children and send it in another direction that you don't want to do to your kids, because they deserve a childhood.
Absolutely. That's such a phenomenally important point and often is overlooked because of how nuanced it is. But all the more reason, Rosalind, what you're pointing to, it's so key to, excuse me, to ensure that you have the right supports to process your own emotions and needs around this major transition. Because the more healthy you are overall, the more aware of any potential blind spots that you are, or any other triggers, et cetera, and you can effectively deal with those and you have tools and strategies to rely on, the more you're going to be resilient and strong for your children. And once they, again, test these boundaries and see, oh, mom's good, dad's good, it's going to give them that permission that they need to be up to their kid-like behavior and kid-like things, which sometimes it means giving you a hard time and sometimes it means doing other things that you wish they wouldn't, but that is part of the journey and that is part of what they're expected to be doing, because that is how they develop and learn, and really find themselves and find their own way. And one more key piece that I would like to share around this that I think is relevant is really ensuring, and I can't stress, I don't think there's really enough times you could say it, but regularly ensuring that you are communicating clearly to your kids that it is not their fault.
Yes.
And that even if you may be having disagreements and frustrating moments with your co-parent about things having to do with the kids, that you still reiterate to them, yes, we are frustrated because of our communication or lack thereof. We will figure it out, but it is not your fault. Even though it may feel that way because it has to do with something about you or related to you, it is not your fault. It is so, so, so important to multiple times iterate that to them on a regular basis because they have such a strong tendency to blame themselves.
Totally agree. Very
Yeah.
important.
Awesome.
I
Well,
feel that we've covered a lot of territory, but I
yeah,
think
we
we've
have.
covered some very strong issues that sadly we see too often.
Yes.
And these are issues that can be avoided when you have the insight that we've given you now.
Yes.
So, and this is the kind of support you get from working with divorce coaches and professionals who are used to working with divorce dynamics, because these are the types of things that happen very frequently and can be avoided.
Absolutely. 100%. Now, Rosalind, you have a phenomenal thing that I'd like to highlight. You are doing for what we term divorce month because January is notoriously the highest month for divorce inquiries and people actually filing for divorce. Could you just say a couple of words about this phenomenal resource? And you've already been doing this for a number of years, so please just share a little bit about it.
Yes, so we are commemorating International Child-Centered Divorce Month, and it runs throughout the month of January. And this is the 19th year that we've been doing this. So I put together a special website that's available only in January. And on this website, divorce experts around the world have free gifts and resources and services to give you that if you're a parent, if you're struggling before divorce, during divorce, after divorce, into blended families and co-parenting, dating after divorce, whatever the dynamic is, we have professionals who are covering that. And we are offering these gifts that these experts who really care about families and children in divorce are making available on this website. And all you have to do is enter your name and your email address, and you get to the free gift page, and you could just check as many off as you want and download as many of these wonderful gifts. And they include ebooks and e-courses and video programs and tip sheets and free coaching and all kinds of things along those lines. There's wonderful, valuable gifts, and they're all absolutely free. So the link to go to is divorcedparentsupport.com. That's divorced with an ED, divorcedparentsupport.com. And just make sure you get your email address in there, and instantly you'll get to the page where you can download as many of the gifts as you want for International Child-Centered Divorce Month.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much for everything you do to support families through and during and long after, as you said, divorce. And thank you for just creating this incredible resource. I know it is a labor of love and a huge lift, and you've been doing this for many years because of how dedicated you are to supporting families through these difficult transitions. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
Absolutely. And thank you, of course, for your time and energy during this conversation. And you guys are in for a real treat because Rosalind has agreed to do this with me every week for the rest of the month. So I'm really excited for our next conversation. So be sure to tune in next Wednesday and we will see you then. Take care.